comes through with his cops, forces them, kind of clears everything out, looks at what's going on, and looks at Fichtner and D'Onofrio and says, I want these two arrested for murder. They go to get arrested. They know things are going to be pretty grim. Looks at Mace, says, I want this woman to get medical attention. And then everyone's kind of standing around looking, and he says, hey, arrest these two now. So they start to comply, and, D'Onofrio's like telling, hey, this is who you want, this is who you want. And then he just, doesn't he hold up like the clip? He holds up the clip to him. The clip of them killing Jericho 1. And, he's, he wants him arrested. So then they start undoing the cuffs on the guys. And then by this time, Lenny's making his way through the crowd. And Fichtner, pulls a piece from one of the riot cops. And it's
he's
just,
like,
he takes that second.
Yeah, he's like, get back, everybody get back. And then he fucking freaks out and shoots himself.
He knows what's going on, and he just, blows his brains out. It's, oh, man.
All over D'Onofrio.
All over D'Onofrio. It's nasty. And then D'Onofrio, freaks out, picks up the gun, and is, moving towards Mace, and all the while he's dragging Fichtner's dead body with him.
And the cops, they try to tell him to stop, and he doesn't comply, and they put him down.
Which is another pretty crazy scene, because they're shooting multiple rounds from multiple shooters at this guy in the middle of a large crowd. But before D'Onofrio goes to make his move towards Mace, Nero goes to cover her up. And then, after all this happens, Nero kind of falls to the ground, just exhausted. But Mace thinks that he's shot. So they get up, they go to leave, they're being looked at by paramedics. Lenny says, they're going to take us to the police station. They just want to ask us some questions, for 6 hours. They go to leave, and it's midnight, and you hear the countdown for New Year's. And then it's the turn of the millennium. And May says, hey, we made it. And Lenny says, yeah. And they just kind of give the little hug. And he says, hey, I'll see you at the hospital. And they get in, he goes to the ambulance, she gets in the limo with Strickland, who's going to take her to the hospital. And they drive off, and then a few seconds later, you see Nero running through the crowd and banging on the side of the limo as they're driving, and, Mace looks over and sees him, and the car kind of comes to a stop, and he opens the door and pulls Mace out, and they look at each other, and then he kisses her, which is what he should have done from the get-go. Because she clearly loves him. And he was just too dumb to see it.
He was stuck in the past for a good while.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, he was hung up on Faith for whatever reason.
He talks about it a little bit that...
Yeah, when he's talking to her in the apartment after she gives him shit for living in the past.
Mm-hmm.
When she smashes all his tapes and tells him that it's time to get real. And then he sits down and he talks about, how she was, this girl that he met, and she had this incredible voice, and it could, take all this pain away. And that's, what he saw in her. But, it was clearly over. Time to move on. But, he was hung up, and I can understand that. But it's always just, funny to think, Angela Bassett is right there! She clearly loves you. Don't be an idiot.
And it's Angela Bassett.
And it's Angela Bassett, and she rules. But that's how the movie ends, with that, the two of them, looking at each other, and, Lenny finally realizing, I'm an idiot. This is the one person that means the most to me. She loves me, and I love her. I was just too dumb to realize it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kiss, and it's very much, it's a nihilistic movie with a happy ending.
I did see that Roger Ebert liked it
Yeah,
a lot.
yeah. Didn't he kind of put it on par with Blade Runner? Drew Morton of Pajiba said that Strange Days was an extremely underappreciated film and the best piece of cyberpunk to grace celluloid since Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. That's a direct quote. But yeah, Ebert liked it. Said it was a tour de force. There's a movie called Lady in the Lake, which is a Raymond Chandler novel, which is shot all in first person. It's not great, the movie. But I think it got a lot of comparisons to that because a lot of Strange Days is shot in first-person point of view. But it got kind of mixed reviews. Some people really loved it, some people really hated it. It was pretty divisive. Unfortunately, it just kind of tanked her career for a while. I mean, she never had a huge hit, with the exception of Point Break. I mean, we love Near Dark.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a very low-budget film, which I don't think made even its budget back. I told you Blue Steel is fantastic, which never made the money back, even though that was a fairly low-budget film. Point Break obviously made good money, and then she does this, and it just bombs big time. And then it's 6 years before Way the Water, and even The Way the Water doesn't come out for real until about another 2 years. Because she had done K-19 in 2002.
Oh, that's right.
Which is another big budget movie that did not do well. K-19 was made for $90 million, only makes about $65 million. So it's really not until The Hurt Locker, which is a full 14 years or so after Strange Days. She only made, between Strange Days and The Hurt Locker, she had only made those two films. But it's not until The Hurt Locker that she actually gets that, that mojo back, basically.
Because then she goes and does Zero Dark 30, Detroit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both. I mean, The Hurt Locker was a huge hit, even though it was still a low budget movie and didn't make a lot of money, but it made 3 or 4 times its budget.
And it stayed around for a long time.
It did, because it came out in the summer. And it stayed around, ends up winning Best Picture, against Avatar, which I think was kind of the favorite that year, because it was such a huge phenomenon. But, she gets a lot of acclaim for The Hurt Locker, and then goes and does Zero Dark 30, and Zero Dark 30 got something like, 7-8 Academy Award nominations, including a Best Picture and Best Director. Is a massive hit, even though it's somewhat controversial. And then Detroit, which isn't a great... It does okay. Detroit did okay. It only made about 27 million on like a $35 to $40 million budget. But she gets, some critical acclaim on that. And unfortunately, she hasn't made a movie since, and it's been about 4 years. I keep waiting for her to make another movie. I'm super excited whenever she does make one.
Do you know off the top of your head how old she is?
She was born in 51.
Oh, okay.
So that would make her 70 now. November 27, 1951. Today's 28,
Holy.
So she just turned 70.
What?
Yeah, so she's 70 years old as of yesterday. Wow. James Cameron.
You're telling me her birthday was yesterday?
Birthday was November 27.
See?
She's older than Cameron. Cameron was born in 54. So by looking that up, I saw the original poster for Strange Days, which is Bassett, Fiennes, and Lewis.
Okay, the music.
The music. Which... I had like a weird kind of thing with the score here. The music, first of all, I want to shout out her cinematographer, who is Matthew Leonetti, who just did Poltergeist, which we talked about last month. I also made a mistake. I said John Leonetti, who we talked about on that show briefly, and I said it was the cinematographer for a lot of James Wan's films.
Mm-hmm.
I thought was the son. He's not. He's the brother. He's the brother to Matthew Leonetti, so I want to I want to correct that mistake, my mistake from the last show. Yeah, the music has kind of an interesting journey because they hire Michael Kamen to do the score, who scored Die Hard, who scored Lethal Weapon, Roadhouse, which we've talked about before, kind of the Joel Silver movies. He scores a lot of those. Was hired to do the score. Gets fired off of it. They replace him with Graham Revel. No, they replace him with Deep Forest. It was kind of like an electronic act. I want to say the French. I could be wrong, though.
Okay.
French duo Deep Forest. They're hired to replace Kamen. And then Graham Revel, who did The Crow, who does From Dusk Till Dawn the following year, who does The Craft, another favorite of this podcast. He's hired to do the score for the film. But if you watch the end credits, which we'll talk about in a moment, because the end credits are some of my favorite, Graham Revel is credited as the composer for the film, but then Deep Forest has like an additional score by credit. And then Graham Revel also works on the track like Fall in the Light, which is what's playing over the very, very end of the film where Mace and Nero kiss.
Mm-hmm.
But as we go into the credits, that end credit sequence with not only the Deep Forest and Peter Gabriel track, which is a great piece of music, I don't know what language that is, that he's singing in, is beautiful, and it's incredible, and it's like one of my favorite credit sequences of all time. It's got that score with like the like sepia toned pictures and the neon, like the neon writing, or the like the kind of red and green and yellowish neon font.
Mm-hmm.
With the cast and the crew credits. I love those credits. I'm totally obsessed. You can look them up on YouTube if you just want to see like the Strange Days end credits. I'm completely obsessed with that track and those sepia tone stills with the writing, introducing the cast and the crew over, because it has no credits in the film. It has the title, and then that's it. And then a couple of times it'll pop up on screen, like, you know, what the time is and then what the actual date is.
Yeah, throughout.
Yeah,
that's true.
Just a few times, and it does it at the very, very end of the film when it says, you know, it's like 12:01 or 12:02 of January 1st, 2000. And then it goes into the end credits. My favorite. I love them so much. There's something about them. There's something like completely entrancing about them. So you probably can't find the movie easily, but you can definitely look those up on YouTube very easily. They're some of my favorites. But that's the thing with the music. It's got like kind of a electronic score, and a lot of electronic artists. Some, I don't even know what you would call that. House? Is it like a house?
Yeah.
Score, like or like by some house artists. Electronica, whatever that was, like in the mid '90s. That, anyways, that's. I just wanted to shout them out and talk about those end credits because they're something that's always stuck with me. I can't tell you how many times I've looked up the Strange Days end credits on YouTube. And I do want to shout out the end of the movie takes place at the Bonaventure, or most of the end, like the stuff in the suite and the hotel. It's in downtown Los Angeles. Kind of has like a main cylinder and then like 4 cylinders on the outer edge. Very famous for like the glass elevators going up the side of the building. Was pretty popular in movies, especially around that time. The very end of In the Line of Fire takes place there. True Lies, the chase scene, which culminates in Schwarzenegger on horseback, even though it takes place in DC, is that hotel that he goes into with the glass elevators and then the jump off the roof and everything is the Bonaventure. And it's down here. It also makes an appearance in another famous film in 1995. Kind of. The back end of it.